What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking Helldivers 2. Now, hold on a second here. I know that I have probably already just lost a couple of you because for some reason people don't like it when I talk about Helldivers, but I ask you to please give this video a chance as we are going to be talking about some seriously positive things going on in Helldivers right now that might change how you feel about the game, or if you are somebody who has been wishy-washy about it, you might actually find that it is worth coming back to, and you might find some new enjoyment out of the game for what we're going to be talking about today. So bear with me for a little bit. But today I want to talk about the changes and improvements that have been happening with Helldivers over the course of the past 2 months, because it has had quite the change in attitude over the past couple of months for certain players, and people have either been loving where it's going or not really enjoying it. So I kind of want to talk all about that today. So first, if you are somebody who has not been following Helldivers 2 for a long time, or if you just are somebody who has not been enjoying the game for a while, basically about 2 months ago in mid-August, they released a post on Steam talking about the changes that they wanted to do for the future and being a little bit more open with the player base and more feedback, more improvements, more changes. And they basically laid out this 60-day time frame that they have for improving the game stability-wise, gameplay-wise, and essentially making it the best version of itself that it can be in response to player feedback. They talked about doing things like updating combat, balancing, reworking, those types of things. And long story short, as of a couple of days ago, they released another post talking about how it is now basically the conclusion of that 60-day time frame. There has been a lot of changes to Helldivers 2 over the past 2 months. They've had a couple of smaller updates and patches that have come out since then. Obviously, we've had, I think, 2 war bonds come out since, or it might even be just one. I think it was just the chemical one, if I'm not mistaken. But over the course of that 60-day time frame, they have made a ton of changes. And whether or not it was a success or not is basically up to the individual, but at least in my opinion, I think that they have made some serious strides towards making Helldivers 2 the game that everybody wants it to be. And all of it basically culminates into 2 of these absolutely massive patch updates that we got, one back in September and one a couple of days ago. In fact, I think it was yesterday as of the recording of this video, and you can just see, you can sort of see it scrolling in the background right now, but if you want to pause and take a look at anything individually, there is a ton of stuff that they have changed in these particular updates. It's probably still scrolling through all of them now as I'm talking, because there's just that much that has been going on. And basically these patches and updates have made it so that way we are stronger as players, from buffs to our weapons, buff to our equipment, changes to stratagems, changes to just the way armor works, to basically nerfs to the enemies, to making them weaker, making them easier to take out. So that way we basically have a lot more power, and essentially these patches made us go Super Saiyan, if I'm being honest with you. They basically gave us so much power, and they have buffed, I think, over 70 of the weapons in the entire game, both stratagem and just normal weapons, that now the gameplay just feels significantly more satisfying and rewarding to even go through, even on some of the lower difficulties. But even on the higher difficulties, they're really not that tough anymore. Granted, there are still some situations where it's still not going to be in your favor. I mean, all these patch notes and all these weapon buffs and whatnot don't necessarily help when you have 2 stalker nests that spawn right next to each other, so you just get bombarded with them for a while, or when you're in a sandstorm and you can't see what's happening and a charger just comes out of nowhere and just runs into you. Not really a whole lot you can do about that, but at the very least, from a gameplay and technical standpoint, the weapons, the combat, the stability overall just is significantly better. The weapons just feel a lot more powerful. A very big and prominent example was the flamethrower. Prior to the Escalation of Freedom update, the flamethrower was really, really strong and very powerful. And then when Escalation of Freedom came out, they nerfed it into the ground. And with these patches that have come since the start of this particular 60-day time frame, the weapon has become even better than it was pre-Escalation of Freedom. So now it's not only back to its former glory, but it's a little bit more than that. And that's only one example of some of the crazy things that they've done with just changing the way that the gameplay works in this game. Armor breaking and armor penetration is now significantly easier to work with. A very simple example of this is the Senator handgun. The revolver is now heavy armor breaking, which means you can technically use that to take out chargers and bile titans, which is hilarious. But there's so many other things that have gotten changed or gotten tweaked. So many stratagems and weapons that were underperforming or weren't really used a whole lot are now significantly more viable in many different ways. One that I really liked using was the Plasma 1 Scorcher, because it's the laser weapon, or I guess the plasma weapon, whatever you want to call it, but now it has full auto capabilities, and its ammo and just overall performance is a lot better, although you do burn through ammo a little bit quicker, but I guess they got to balance it some way. But across the board, the weapons are just significantly better. They feel so much more fluid and so much more forgiving, to the point where, at least on the combat front, things definitely are a lot better. So then, in going back to what they initially were talking about when they promised this plan in the first place, they were talking about reapproaching balancing, updating damage mechanics, and reworking all types of gameplay manners. And in that sense, I think they kind of succeeded in a lot of ways, because obviously the balancing there's still a few things here and there that are obviously a little bit tricky, but I think they're a little bit more niche. I know right now, and this isn't even necessarily a weapon thing, but there's something weird going on with the enemy patrol spawnings to where they're a little bit funky, but that's one thing that you can kind of play around a little bit, or something that doesn't necessarily show up a whole lot. But in terms of like the weapon balance and how they work, they are significantly more better off. And again, as I said before, weapons that were not nearly as prominent or viable before are way more better off now. The way that they just rehandled the armor system and just made it so that way even the big tough enemies, you just have significantly more options for taking them out, was, in my opinion, very well done. And overall, they wanted to make combat feel a lot more engaging and rewarding, and I think they definitely succeeded in that regard. And I think it's just best probably if I just read a little bit of the 60-day timeline conclusion update that they posted yesterday as of the recording of this, because I think it sums it up pretty well. As we wrap up our 60-day community commitment, I want to take a moment to reflect on the journey we've taken together. Your feedback regarding the Escalation of Freedom update was both insightful and vital to our improvement together. We listened, we learned, and we took action. There has been a comprehensive balancing pass of over 70 weapons and stratagems, reworking armor penetration and adjusting enemy armor and health values. Several enemies have been overhauled to ensure they're present and challenging while feeling rewarding to defeat. Notable changes include reducing armor values for heavy enemies like the Hulks, Chargers, Impalers, and Biotitans, along with limiting the rocket fire from Devastators and gunships. That was a big one. The Devastators and gunships being able to just spam rockets was so annoying. Now they actually have a limited amount of rockets that they can shoot at you before they run out, which is really nice. We took a deep dive into the core systems like enemy spawning, as well as targeting and vision for the automatons. In terms of performance, we made some big changes under the hood to ensure a more responsive and optimized experience as you bring freedom and justice to Super Earth. We've refactored UI systems to render more efficiently. We've optimized fire effects and terrain deformation. We've improved our internal system and teams. Automated testing has gotten better, and our engine team has expanded to help us refine our processes for long-term stability and smoother gameplay. Our commitment to you moving forward. As we keep building this game, we are committed to keeping the lines of communication open through regular player surveys, improved patch notes, and more frequent updates via blog posts and stream. We will also make sure to expand our closed betas to make sure we catch valuable feedback early. On behalf of the team at Arrowhead, I want to thank you for your patience, your insight, and your passion for our game. We've genuinely enjoyed seeing your reaction to our latest updates, and we're excited to continue developing the game while ensuring that it delivers on its core fantasy and remains a game well loved by all to play. Together, we are shaping the future for Helldivers 2, and we want to show you what's next for the core game experience and the next chapter of the Galactic War. So I know I said that really quickly, and I kind of went through that sort of fast, but you can also read it yourself if you really want to, because there was a couple things I glossed over. But basically, yes, I do think that they succeeded in a lot of the things that they had promised with this particular time frame. But I think the big question is this enough to make people more interested in Helldivers 2 now versus before? Because a lot of the issues regarding Helldivers 2 was its replayability. Some of the more under the hood type situations, like I know the PlayStation Network connection was a big thing, and I still don't necessarily know what the stance is on that. I don't know if people who are outside of regions that have access to PlayStation Network are still unable to play the game. I actually have not looked into that myself. If that's still a factor, that is obviously a very understandable factor. And certain other aspects about the game, like this is not necessarily super related, but I personally have not been super duper interested in the recent couple of premium war bonds that they've added in. Not that I don't think that the themes of them are great or that I think that they have some interesting stuff in there. I just think that they're kind of going towards a player over function for a lot of these, because you have things like titles, skins, which aren't really that important, and a lot more cosmetic options, and there's not necessarily that many weapons or items, or in some cases now they even have stratagems locked behind them now, with the most recent one, the Chemical Agents, as 2 stratagems that are linked to the premium war bond, which I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about that particular factor, but that's something we just kind of have to see how they keep going with it. And again, it is true that yes, you can still get premium currency pretty easily in the game. I just haven't necessarily played enough to keep constantly getting the super credits. But I think the question for a lot of people, as I stated, was, is this enough to get a lot of people back into the game and to get people to be playing it more consistently when it has had so many rocky ups and downs since its release, essentially. While I can't necessarily make that decision for you, it's really up to you. I do think that the game is in a much better position now than it has been for the past couple of months. Again, I think that the changes, the balances, the tweaks, all the under the hood stuff that they've done has all really helped out with the game in terms of making it more enjoyable for people who don't necessarily want to play it super duper intensely or super duper seriously. I think the overall theme that they want to go with this particular plan and all the updates and changes that they've done is to make the game just more accessible to people regardless of their playtime, their skill level, and all that. And I think in terms of that, they succeeded very well because the game definitely does feel significantly easier to get into. It feels a lot easier to play, feels significantly less punishing. It feels like you're dying to less BS, essentially. Obviously, it still happens every now and then, but it's way much fewer and far between, at least in my experience playing it over the past couple of days. And I do think that Arrowhead has done a good job with this, but I think they definitely need to continue doing good jobs with this. I think they need to stop going back and forth and doing this one step forward, one step back type thing, because a lot of people are worried that with all the good stuff that got with these updates, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen? Like right now, as I said before, there's some weird stuff going on with the patrol spawning and some enemies spawning in weird situations, which is making it a little bit more frustrating. That's not necessarily a super duper major thing. It happens a little bit, but it doesn't happen a whole lot. But is it going to be a problem that happens later on? Or is it going to be something that grows into a much bigger issue? And that's something that people are worried about. Personally, I've said this before many times, but I think Helldivers 2 is a phenomenal game concept. And I think that it has made some pretty good strides in the past couple of months to sort of recover the sort of not quite fumble, but almost a fumble that it had a while ago. And while it's not a perfect game in any way, shape, or form, I think that definitely the fact that Arrowhead has put this kind of effort into being transparent, being heard, and communicating with the player base to give us to a position that we are in right now is very, very good. And I think they definitely need to keep continuing with this particular mindset. I'm not sure when they have the Illuminate plan to come out, because I know they're going to be adding that in because people have been wanting it and they would literally be stupid for not adding it in. And I think they basically all but confirmed that the Illuminates are coming, and based on some of the operations that we've gotten in game, it could probably point to that happening. But when that happens, that has the potential to basically give Helldivers 2 a much bigger resurgence than any of these patches have done in the past, because now that we have a new enemy faction, a new potentially types of new biomes that we're going to go through, types of new locations. They could theme these a little bit differently because the Illuminate probably have technology and stuff that is different than anything that we have seen from the bugs or bots in the past. And it's also going to shake up the meta because now you have an entirely new faction of enemies that the weapons have to perform against. So certain things that maybe didn't get a whole lot of value before now are incredibly strong. But that's getting a little bit off topic. I kind of really just wanted to focus more on the actual updates and improvements that Helldivers 2 has had within the past couple of months, because again, as I said, I'm very much surprised and pleased at the stuff that has happened in the game with the past 60 days. And I don't want this to just be a 60-day plan, I guess, is my takeaway from all of this. I want this to be a constant back and forth between the devs, between the fans, good communication, because as they said, they want to make it so that way this is a game that is loved by all players all around the world. And I completely agree with that, because as I've said before, this is one of the few games that I can just sort of pick up whenever and play, and not too many games can say that. I know a lot of people like to compare this to Deep Rock Galactic in a lot of ways, and yes, they are incredibly similar, and I know some people like to think that you need to pick one or the other, but you can enjoy both of these games. They are good in their own particular ways. They have their own sort of niches, their own fills. You don't have to like one over the other. You don't have to pick one more than the other. One doesn't necessarily have to be better than the other. You can just enjoy them and play them. And that's kind of what this whole program that they wanted to do is all about, is showing the players that, like, hey, we care about what you feel. We care about what this game can do. We care about how much fun you guys can have it. But in any event, I just wanted to talk about how I feel about this particular change of events that has happened in Helldivers over the past 2 months. I think that the game has gotten significantly better and is way more viable and way more enjoyable than it was before. Not saying that it wasn't before, but it had a little bit of a rocky stretch for a little while where people weren't necessarily enjoying it. They were hopping out of it. So if you are somebody who has never picked up Helldivers 2 before, or you played it for a while and you didn't necessarily like what was happening, you didn't like the changes, and you stuck out of it for a little bit, maybe give it a shot now, see if you like it, see if you like the changes, and let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you guys think you might give Helldivers 2 another shot if you haven't played it in a while, or if you've never played it before, do you think you might pick it up now? Because I do think it is, as I said, it is good of a place that it has been for a very long time. And let me know how you guys feel about this sense of devs being very transparent with their fan base and their player base, because I do think it is something that is very important for both indie and AAA game devs to have at the same time. And I hope you guys found this video informative and a little bit entertaining. If you did, please be sure to let me know by hitting that like button and consider becoming a member and subscribing today, as it really helps me out a lot. For Super Earth Helldivers, I will see you in the next video.